Good morning. And as we spend some time getting our minds set for taking of the Lord's Supper, I'd like to remind us of a few words that were written by the Hebrew writer. I'd like to start reading in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Of course, when we understand from chapter 12, verse 1, when he says, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses, that he is talking about the men and women of chapter 11. Men like Abel and Enoch and Noah and Abraham and Joseph and Moses, the great men of faith of the Old Testament. And then he mentions in verse 32 some of the great prophets, men like Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the other prophets, he says. These men and women, Sarah is mentioned as well, all lived by faith. They stood in the face of persecution. They were not fearful. Verse 37 says they were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were tempted. They were put to death with the sword. They went around in sheepskins and goatskins. They were destitute and afflicted and ill-treated. He will say in verse 38, men of whom the world was not worthy. These great men and women of faith stood for God in spite of all of the persecution that was there, and the world was not worthy of them, the Hebrew writer says. He will then say in verse 39, all of these, having gained approval through their faith, did not receive what was promised. And what was promised? The coming of the Messiah. And so he will then go into chapter 12, making this huge contrast for us. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, and this great cloud was faithful until death without the knowledge of the Messiah. And he will then say, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Surely if those men could, without the knowledge of Jesus Christ, surely we can. And so what we are doing on this first day of the week is remembering our great Messiah. Remembering the great prophet that was to come, who did come, who gave his life for us on that cross. He will say in verse 2, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the living God. That's what we need to do this morning, is fix our eyes on Jesus. He will say in verse 3, consider him who endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Let's take this time this morning to remember Jesus Christ, to remember our Messiah and the things that he has done for us. Let's remain faithful until death. And let's let this time together, this time of remembrance, bring back the ideas of Jesus Christ and the cross. And let's make sure that we are serving him, remembering him, following him, being faithful unto him. Consider him. Fix your eyes on him today as we take the Lord's Supper together.